Desiree Daniels is a psychosocial therapist, former military social worker, and author of the powerful new book Still I Stayed. Drawing from both her professional expertise and her deeply personal journey, Desiree opens up about the realities of toxic relationships, the quiet battles of abuse, and the courage it takes to choose healing over silence. In this book, she invites readers into her story not to assign blame, but to awaken, to reflect, and to break cycles that often remain hidden behind closed doors. With raw honesty and compassion, Still I Stayed reminds us that peace at the cost of your spirit is not peace at all, and that reclaiming your voice is an act of both survival and strength. In this episode, we'll explore Desiree's journey, the lessons she's learned, and how she now uses her story to empower others to walk toward freedom, healing, and authentic living. Desiree Daniels, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you. And, I'm just excited to dive into the story, one that I see it's an empowering story. You decided to be a voice for the voiceless by writing a book. And my first question really would be, what made you or what led you to express yourself in this way?
I chose to write this book because silence keeps too many women trapped. So for years, I carried my own pain quietly. I'm not someone that will share what's going on in my life. I internalize a lot of things. So I decided to write the book to give my words like meaning, to give it life, and also to break my own silence. So a way to tell my truth, not just for myself, but like you also mentioned, for other females also, that are sometimes scared to share their stories. So to give voice to the voiceless as well. It was also very therapeutic for myself, almost like keeping a journal, writing in a diary. So each page that I wrote helped me to process what I'd endured and reminded me also that healing begins when you give your story a voice and that there's no reason for me to be scared to share my story. I feel sometimes, especially females, not all females, and I don't want to generalize, but sometimes we feel we need to make ourselves small because there's this thing of males are stronger than females. But I also believe that we are so much stronger when we stand together. And that's why I also decided to write my book.
Sure. Now, chapter one, the first signs, early dates, and subtle controls. Looking back at those very first subtle red flags in your relationship, what do you wish your younger self had understood about the difference between genuine love and early signs of control?
Hmm. I think the most important thing is to know yourself. When you know yourself, you will make better choices, also, I believe. I think when you do not know yourself, you open to making a lot of mistakes. And sometimes you are more prone to go with the flow, to go what society expects of you to do. And then you kind of miss the red flags. Even if it's jumping up and down in front of your face.
Mm-hmm.
You will not see it because you will not understand it's actually red flags. So I could feel, they people say we have intuition and you have a sixth sense. I could feel stuff feels off. But because it looked perfect on paper, I
Yeah,
ignored the actual red
yeah,
flags.
yeah.
So what was red flags for me was maybe light red and not like blood red. Not that
Wow,
blood
wow,
red, if it makes
that's interesting.
sense. Yes.
Mm, mm,
So, yes, I think if I knew myself back then and if I stood more firm in what I am going to tolerate and not tolerate, I would have seen the red flags.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, in chapter two, you write about feeling trapped after saying yes, despite those blood red flags. What do you
Mm.
think? What do you think kept you from walking away at that point? And what advice would you give to someone who feels the same pressure to go through a wedding? In this time that we live
Mm.
in.
Yes. I would say if I can talk to my younger self back then, which was 26, between 26, 28, I would say regardless of what money was given out, it's better to not go through with the wedding and save yourself years of hurt than going through with the wedding and having to rebuild after maybe years together. There's nothing wrong with rebuilding. We all can start over, I believe, regardless of what age you
Mm,
are. You can start over. Get people that get degrees after 50.
mm,
So there's nothing wrong with starting over. There's no stigma to starting over. But I think also to not lose out on years that you could have used on something else.
mm,
It's better to sit with kind of shame for maybe just that day that was supposed to be your wedding day,
mm,
than having to work through years of trauma and years of hurt and years of pain by staying and by wanting to please people and not disappoint people.
mm.
Sometimes people come from far to attend a wedding. Now you also think of all those people that traveled far, that maybe use their own money to book into accommodation and things. Um, Material things can always be, you can always get it back again. Money you
Mm.
can always get back again. Um, and I would also tell my younger self and females that are maybe questioning themselves if they should marry the person they're engaged to right now. Um, Rather take your time on deciding what you want to do. Maybe postpone the wedding if you have to, but don't feel rushed because um, your parents are waiting for grandchildren. And now
Yeah,
you
yeah.
need to go through with the wedding. Yes, so I will say to people that's maybe questioning, rather take your time to postpone.
Mm.
And people that already feel, but I can't go through with it, just cancel. And rather wait to find your person than going through with something that you might regret later on.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
in chapter three, when your father asked if you would take your own personal advice, as a social worker,
Mm,
it became a turning point in your story. Now,
mm,
how did that moment of how did that moment of role reversal, being both the professional and the victim, shape your view on healing and accountability?
mm. Yes. As mental health professionals, we always advise to also look after ourselves. Especially if, say, for instance, in a month you just had like very heavy cases, we always advise to maybe also go see another professional.
Mm,
And that was always very difficult for me to do, to see myself on the other side of the table. For instance, like now, like you, the one that's guiding the interview and not myself, understand? So it's always difficult to find yourself on the
yeah.
other side of the table. Um, and being asked that question by my dad, actually, as difficult as it was to hear, I think it was more difficult for me to execute, because it's easier to tell clients, but this is what you need to do, and guide clients on what they need to do. So it wasn't easy for me to execute, but it was needed. It was needed, and it also gave me a personal perspective. I won't say a new perspective, but a personal perspective of what abuse clients actually go through.
Mm,
From realizing they in an unhealthy relationship to realizing and building up the strength to actually go see a doctor to get your JET 88 completed, your
mm,
incident report completed, and then
mm,
taking that same document to the police. It takes a lot to stand in a police station and to tell your story,
mm,
with the hopes that someone will understand and that someone will have compassion towards you. So my experience actually gave me a real life glimpse of what my clients that I counseled already went through.
mm.
Yes.
Becoming a mom, changed the stakes for you. Like, how did your son's arrival influence your understanding of boundaries and the urgency to break generational cycles of abuse?
Mm. Um, I don't want to say that it's more important to break generational cycles when it's a boy, but we know that a male should be the head of the household, right? When they
Mm,
married. I don't want other parents more to come to me and say, listen, but your son is mistreating my daughter. Or a
mm.
dad coming to me and say, I handed my daughter over to your son on her wedding day with the
Wow,
hopes
wow.
of and the belief of he's going to look after my daughter. I think it's also important for people to know that and to realize and to understand that when a parent hand over the child to another
Mm,
person on the wedding day,
mm,
um, it does not always mean just financial, taking care of them financially. Um, it's on all areas, emotional, physical, spiritual, not just financial.
yeah.
So I don't want other parents to be disappointed in my son. And that's why it's
Mm,
important for me to rather break generational cycles now than my son having to struggle with it because he doesn't
mm,
understand, but why am I struggling with this? And
mm.
also realizing, but my mommy could have broken this years back and she didn't.
Now, I appreciate the many layers, within your book. And one of the quotes early on in the book, reads, "Love should not feel like walking on glass. It should lift you,
Mm,
not leave you wounded before the vows are spoken."
mm,
So that is quite profound, and knowledge is power. So if we're
mm,
able to take on this knowledge, in the midst of making those important decisions in life, taking significant steps in life, then knowing this should, again, prevent unnecessary hurt and confusion,
mm,
within on that path that we walk. Now, in chapter 5, you describe emotional abuse as a horror film that only you can see, you being
mm,
in that position, being the victim. How did you learn to trust your own perception of reality again when the abuse was invisible, to everyone around you?
mm. I think that emotional abuse um, is it can be the biggest silent killer because of
Yeah.
the fact that we can't see it, and there's no proof, there's no
Mm,
bruises, there's no blue
mm,
marks, there's no blood, but there's that internal bleeding, and I questioned myself for a very long time. And what's so interesting is that I know all the signs as a professional, as a social worker. I know all the signs,
yeah.
but it also takes me back to you can be a doctor or a nurse and know all the processes of what it means to become a mother and what you need to do with a baby and all of those things. And yet, when you become a mother for the first time, it's almost like all of those things that you know professionally goes out the window. And I
Mm.
also felt the same way. Like as a social worker, I know the theory, right? I
Yeah,
know the
yeah.
book stuff. Like I studied.
Mm.
Um, but when I had to implement it practically and look at it practically, it was very difficult to do. Um, so like I said, I questioned myself a lot, but I came to the point where I had to tell myself and kind of convince myself that I'm not imagining things, and I shouldn't make it lighter than physical abuse. I shouldn't disregard the emotional abuse just because no one else can see it.
Mm.
Emotional abuse is very difficult to prove
Mm.
based on the fact that there is no actual physical evidence.
Mm.
Um, but if you have to read through my journal, which most part of it is in my book, in my ebook, that's my proof of emotional abuse. Um, and after I wrote my last chapter in my ebook,
Mm.
um, that was also confirmation for me of the emotional abuse that I went through. And that's when I also told myself that it was actually abuse. That was just
Yeah,
confirmation again that it was actually abuse. Yes.
yeah. No, absolutely. Sure. In chapter 6, you share about how you confided in your husband, that you felt suicidal. I mean, you were going through a lot. This
Mm.
is real life. But his response to that, or his reaction to that, was just cold. Now, how did you find the strength to choose, action and life for yourself and your son after that moment of just utter despair?
Mm. Having a good support system with whatever we go through, not always the bad things, the good stuff as well.
Crucial.
Like we can
Mm.
celebrate good and bad with a good support system. So having a good support system was very helpful. And a support system, you don't need 10,000s of people to be a support system. Sometimes only one person is good enough. So having someone that I could talk to after my conversation with my husband,
Mm.
and someone that could remind me, but your life is worth it. Um, and there's still so much more for you to do, and your story can be someone else's testimony as well. As much as it's going to be your testimony, someone else can learn from your story. They don't have to go through the same things that you went through, they can actually learn from your story. That also gave me the strength to continue. um, yes, 100%. My son as well, and not seeing or wanting to see my son grow up without his mommy. But also the support system I had gave me the strength to continue.
Mm. And
Yes.
speaking of that strength, that is one of the first things that I picked up when I read your book, and something that I can just acknowledge, your courage, your boldness, but your strength as a woman who had so much to juggle in life. Because one thing that one event that I also know about in your life is that you lost your mother, a couple of
Mm,
years back, and at the time, of course, I had no idea what you were going through, amidst the loss of your mom, and having to just muscle everything, having to just be that dedicated wife and mom despite everything that's happening. So I would just like to applaud you for really standing your ground, and leaning into God, in that moment, because in any event in life, things can go either south or north, or
mm,
and the fact that you
mm,
made a conscious decision to just, I almost want to say, stick it out, for the sake of your own life and your future. The potential you still have in this life, it's immense. And of course, for your
mm,
son and your family at large, even for, the opposing parties in this case,
mm,
to be able to um, literally be an inspiration and also be a mirror to them, because at the end of the day, all of this is being done in love. It's not a
mm,
matter of weapons and
mm.
wanting to start a war. It's wanting to
Yeah.
reconcile, but still know where to draw the line.
Mm,
Choosing healthy boundaries. And we hear these, we hear these terms on a daily basis almost, but people, many
mm,
people do not know how to take the action that you've taken, to pursue freedom and to pursue truth.
mm,
So I really admire that. And one of the poems in the book, as you know, I'm an avid lover of poetry, and being
mm,
a poet myself. Poetry is such a another powerful form of expression, and I would like to just read this one to you. It's one that you share with us in the book, and that a very
mm,
good friend of yours, he just opened his heart and took his pen, and with so much
mm,
compassion, wrote this poem. And I would love to read it. But before we get there, I would just like for us to quickly go back to the last chapter of the book, which is chapter 7. Um,
mm,
and in there, you frame divorce not as failure, but as a rebrand and an act of self-love. And how has that redefinition of divorce shifted not only your personal journey, but also the way you support other women through similar struggles?
mm. I'm not sure if it's only, and don't want to bring it back to race, but I'm not sure if it's only in the colored community where it's expected for us just to sit through it and you just continue regardless
Mm,
of what's
mm.
happening within your
Yeah, it's like
marriage.
a stigma. Yeah.
Um, yes, yes. And that's also what kept me for so long. It's now 11 years. Not to disappoint people and not to seem like a failure, but this life after divorce and this life after when you choose yourself. And I think the moment when we regard someone else's life as more important than your life, that's a problem, because we are all equally important, um, regardless of our status, regardless of our
Mm,
race, regardless of our
mm.
color,
Yeah.
regardless of what we have in life. We're all
Yeah.
equally important.
Yeah.
So I decided that my life, my career is also important, because can I tell you that it was either me giving up my career as a social worker because I feel I've been inauthentic with clients, because I've been sitting with
Mm,
clients and
yeah.
then they come maybe for couples counseling and then I guide them, but in the meantime, I'm not following my own advice. So it was a thing for me to say, if you stay, you need to give up your profession because you can't be inauthentic. And I also felt like it's almost like it's not ethical as well, because I'm being a hypocrite. Like I can't guide people and guide them into
Mm,
what a healthy
mm,
relationships or marriages is, or what it means to
mm,
choose yourself. And in the meantime, I am intentionally making
mm,
myself sit in something that's
mm.
unhealthy.
Yeah.
So the word divorce, it's not a death sentence. And I think that's also my title of that chapter, or the question after the word divorce. It's not a death sentence.
Mm,
It's choosing yourself, and it's also showing other younger couples that maybe realize after the first few months, but they made a mistake, that it's okay to exit. It's okay to exit and to choose yourself. And to choose life and then after that to make
mm,
better choices. Some people stay
mm,
for years and years. Some people also celebrate, oh, we've been married for 43 years. But what are you
mm,
celebrating?
mm,
Are you
mm,
celebrating the number 43, or can you
mm,
actually say, we have grown so much together? This is how we have grown together. Or are you celebrating negativity and being in a
mm.
toxic marriage and then covering it with, we've been married for this amount of years together?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's important for people to also know that divorce is not a death sentence,
Mm,
and there's nothing to be ashamed about if you do
mm.
divorce.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like you said, that exit, it doesn't have to be
Mm.
dramatic. It can be,
Mm.
a mutual decision that's done in love, and then
Mm.
executed in that way. And
Mm.
coming back to your role within your career as a social worker, and having to witness so many different dynamics in your clients' lives, it all comes down to authenticity, integrity, and that is what
Mm.
you also choose at the end of the day. So you choose that personally but also professionally. Now there are two poems in your book, in your ebook. I think I would just like to read one of them, and it's written by Mr. B.G. Arends, who, again, like I said earlier, who just took the insight that he had into your story, and with compassion he decided to pen this for you.
Mm.
Um, and this one is titled "I Sit and Wonder." Now, I would like for you. I'm hoping that as I read this, that of course you've read it many times, and you've
Mm.
had to literally, walk in all of this. But I think just as a moment, just for us to take a moment to reflect, you can just tell me after I've read it. You can tell me what your
Mm.
thoughts are now. Looking back at everything. Okay, so
Mm.
it's titled "I Sit and Wonder." I sit and wonder sometimes about the when. I sit and wonder sometimes about the why. As I scream into my pillow at night so that he cannot hear my cry. I sit and wonder about this life I live. I wonder about this lie I'm living. The world outside only sees what I let them. They can never sense that I'm in pain and grieving. I sit and wonder about all these years and moments wasted. I sit and wonder about the how, wondering how I handed him my power to tell me what he can and will and won't allow. I sit and wonder, why am I always the case or the reason about how many more bruised lips and abuse I can take? The finger pointing that is always directed at me, the one who made the mistake. Maybe I sat too long wondering, afraid of all the guilt and the shame, too afraid to walk through the open door, afraid of being judged or tainting my family name. I gave up my own happiness to get what in return? He snatched it and threw it on an already burning fire. Took the last taste of my self confidence, staring at my ashes as I watch it all burn. I sit and wonder how many times I've hoped that things will change. Nothing that makeup and a Bible can't fix. But the only person I was lying to was me. B.G.
Mm.
Arends. Wow. Okay. How
Mm.
do you feel when you hear those words, or when you read those words?
Hearing it now again, um, I want to say it's almost like when a closed door, when you have been stuck in a dark room and the blinds were closed and the doors were locked, and
Mm,
now you allowed to open up the blinds so that the light can come in, and you're allowed to open up a door to walk through the door
mm,
into the light. I actually get that type of feeling. So I
mm.
want to say, if I can sum it up in one word, it's almost like it's freeing to hear the poem. So when I hear the
Yeah.
poem, I don't see all the words playing out in front of me, like the crying and all of that. What I'm seeing
Mm.
now is like the freedom of it's done, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Almost like it's
it's
over.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've been liberated. You
Mm,
know, you've been through it. You're not going through it anymore.
mm,
You've been through it. Yeah,
mm,
yeah.
mm,
And again, well done to Mr. B.G. Arends for composing this piece and the other piece that is also titled "Still I Stayed," which is the title
mm,
of your book. Desiree, I would just like for you to tell our listeners, viewers,
mm,
how they can get a hold of your ebook, and
mm.
yeah, if there's any other platform they can follow your journey, please do share.
Yes. So for now, I actually decided from 1st October I will sell the book via Amazon. But I think because we're doing the interview now, I will extend the direct sale, say until end October. So
Okay.
they can either email me. I'm not sure if somewhere they will be able to find the email address.
I will, yes, of
So
course.
they,
I will put it
yeah.
in our description, and I'll also put it on screen. So check it out.
Yes. Yeah, so they
Awesome.
can email me or they can WhatsApp me directly as well until the end of October. So I will keep the price at 250 until end of October. And then from the 1st of November, they can then directly buy it via Amazon.
Okay,
Yes.
that is wonderful. Once again, I salute you for
Mhm.
telling your story with strength, truth, boldness, courage, and tenacity. I think that is the word that would conclude that that
Mhm.
layers, all those layers. But well done, and I'm inspired by you in more ways than one. And I wish you nothing but the best for your future. And yeah, once again, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for making the time. I really, really appreciate it.
Mm. Yes, and thank you for you as well, Mark. Thank you for this opportunity to share my story. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. See you next time. Take care.